The council chamber stretched so vast that atmospheric processors created artificial clouds near its domed ceiling. Professor Krell stood at the witness platform, his 6 tendrils trembling as he stared at the impossible sight before him. In the center of the judgment arena, surrounded by armed guards from a dozen warrior species, stood 3 humans. The chamber held representatives from over 200 civilized worlds. Crystalline beings floated in zero-gravity pods. Massive, armored creatures sat on reinforced platforms. Beings of pure energy flickered inside containment fields. All of them had gone completely silent when the humans entered. The lead human, a tall male who called himself Captain Marcus Webb, stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His posture seemed relaxed, but Krell had spent 40 years studying predator behavior. This was the stance of a creature assessing threats, calculating odds, preparing for violence if necessary. The council arbiter, whose fractured exoskeleton glowed with authority patterns, raised the resonance staff. The sound cut through the massive chamber like a blade. Professor Krell of Zarian Academy, you have taught for 40 standard cycles that humans were nothing more than ancient mythology. You published the definitive academic text, declaring them extinct, if they ever existed at all. And yet here they stand. Explain this contradiction. Krell's primary tendril gestured helplessly. Honored Arbiter, I can only say that my research was based on fragmentary evidence from pre-council civilizations. I believed I was reconstructing cautionary tales, not documenting a living species.
The second human?
A female with silver streaks in her dark hair who identified as Ambassador Joanna Cross stepped forward slightly. Every weapon in the chamber tracked the movement. She seemed not to notice. If I may address the council, we can clear up this confusion quite quickly. You may not, boomed High Commander Drax, a massive Korgan whose species had conquered 40 worlds through military supremacy. His 4 eyes narrowed with suspicion. You infiltrated council space. You decoded our quantum networks. You spied on us for years. These are acts of war. Captain Webb tilted his head slightly, a gesture Krell recognized from his research as a sign of curiosity in predatory species. Commander, we observed public broadcasts. We learned your languages the same way any species would. As for infiltration, your own border stations detected our approach 3 days ago. We announced ourselves. We requested this audience. How exactly is that spying? The third human, a thin male called Dr. Raymond Coe, activated a holographic display without asking permission. Security protocols should have prevented this, but somehow the human's technology bypassed them effortlessly. We've prepared a presentation explaining our journey here. If the council would like to see it before making any decisions about sterilizing our planet, we'd appreciate the opportunity. The casual mention of planetary sterilization sent a ripple of shock through the chamber. The humans knew they were being discussed as a potential threat. They'd been listening more carefully than anyone realized, 20-4 hours earlier. Professor Krell had been teaching his most popular course at Zarian Academy. His lecture hall, a zero-gravity amphitheater orbiting Thalacia Prime, was packed with students from 70 different species. They came from across the galaxy to study with him, to learn about the legendary Deathworld species that had supposedly once threatened civilized space. The humans, Krell had explained to his eager students, were said to come from a Class 12 Deathworld. Their planet rotated around a yellow star, bombarded constantly by radiation. The surface gravity was 0.8 standard, crushing by the standards of most spacefaring species. The atmosphere contained corrosive oxygen. Microbial life existed in every environment, constantly attacking larger organisms. A young Plixian student, her bioluminescent patterns flickering with nervous energy, had raised a delicate appendage. Professor Krell, how could any intelligent species evolve under such conditions? Surely the energy requirements alone would prevent the development of complex cognition. Krell had weaved his tendrils in an approving pattern. An excellent observation, Trill. According to the ancient texts, humans compensated through unprecedented adaptation. They were allegedly persistent predators. They could track prey across vast distances, running for days without stopping. Their bodies could heal from injuries that would prove fatal to most species. They could consume nearly any organic matter for sustenance. He had paused, watching his students lean forward with fascination and fear. But most remarkably, they exhibited something called pack bonding. They would sacrifice themselves for their group. They felt empathy not just for their own species, but for other creatures entirely. Some texts claim they even bonded with non-sentient animals. It's biologically absurd. A Velustrian medical student had protested. Empathy across species barriers would provide no evolutionary advantage. It would be selected against. Indeed, Krell had agreed. Which is why I concluded that humans were mythology. A species with such contradictory traits could not have evolved naturally. They would have destroyed themselves long before achieving space travel. The lecture hall's emergency protocols had activated moments later. Every screen, every speaker, every communication device in the academy had broadcast the same message. An unknown vessel had entered Thalassian space. It carried biological signatures consistent with mythological descriptions of humans. It was requesting permission to land. The dean's voice had been steady, but Krell heard the underlying panic. "Professor Krell, the council has summoned you immediately. They need your expertise. They need to know if these creatures are truly what the ancient warnings described." Standing in the Grand Council chamber, Krell watched Ambassador Cross manipulate the holographic display with practiced ease. She showed images of Earth, a blue and green marble hanging in space. The planet looked almost peaceful in the images, but Krell noticed details that confirmed his worst fears. Massive storm systems churned across entire continents. Mountain ranges reached impossible heights. Oceans covered most of the surface, hiding unknown depths. "Earth," Cross said simply, "our home. We know what you've been saying about it." Professor Krell's research has been very thorough. Most of it is accurate. She pulled up a comparison chart showing Earth next to standard habitable worlds. The differences were staggering. Higher gravity, more extreme temperature variations, greater tectonic activity, a magnetosphere so powerful it deflected solar radiation that would sterilize most planets. "We evolved here," Dr. Ko added. "Every characteristic Professor Krell described is real. We are persistence predators. We do heal rapidly. We can eat almost anything. And yes, we pack bond across species boundaries." The council erupted into chaos. Representatives shouted in hundreds of languages. Translator systems struggled to keep up. High Commander Drax was demanding immediate military action. Peaceful species were calling for caution. Everyone was talking over everyone else. The Arbiter slammed the resonance staff repeatedly, finally restoring order. "The Council will make no decisions in panic. We will hear the complete testimony. We will evaluate the evidence. We will determine whether Earth represents a threat to civilized space." Captain Webb spoke quietly, but his voice carried across the entire chamber. "We appreciate the opportunity to present our case, honored Arbiter. But you should know something before we continue. We didn't come here unprepared. We studied your history very carefully. We know what happens to species that approach the Council from a position of weakness." Ambassador Cross activated another display. This one showed the outer edge of Earth's solar system. Krell felt his breathing spiracles constrict as he recognized what he was seeing. Ships. Hundreds of human ships. Broadcasting military transponders. All holding position just outside Council-monitored space. "We came here for diplomatic contact," Webb continued. "We want to join the galactic community peacefully. But we're not naive. We know the Council respects strength, so we brought our fleet. Just in case." The implications crashed over the Council like a tidal wave. The humans hadn't just found them. They had come prepared for war. They understood interstellar politics. They knew how to negotiate from a position of power. Krell stared at the three humans standing calmly in the judgment arena, and a terrible realization washed over him. Everything he had written about them, every warning he had documented, every threat he had calculated, was true. The humans were exactly as dangerous as the ancient texts claimed, but they were also here. They were talking. They were offering peace. The question was whether the Council would be wise enough to accept the Council. Chamber felt smaller now despite its vast size. Professor Krell stood at the witness platform, acutely aware that every word he spoke might determine whether the galaxy went to war. The three humans watched him with unnerving intensity, their eyes tracking his every movement. He had studied predators his entire career, but being the focus of their attention was entirely different from reading about it. The Arbiter's fractal patterns pulsed with authority. Professor Krell, you will present your research on human capabilities. The Council must understand what we are facing. Krell activated his presentation with trembling tendrils. The holographic display filled the center of the arena, showing fragments of data he had collected over decades. Honored Council. My research began with archaeological discoveries in the Outer Rim. We found warning beacons in dead space, placed there by civilizations that existed before the Council was formed. The first document appeared, its ancient script translated into Galactic Standard. Avoid the third planet orbiting the yellow star. The native species exhibits extreme territorial aggression and unprecedented adaptive capability. Recommend quarantine classification. A Velustrian counselor, his crystalline form refracting light in agitated patterns, spoke up. This beacon is over 10,000 cycles old. How do we know it refers to the same species? Dr. Ku answered before Krell could respond. The coordinates match Earth's location precisely. We found the same beacon ourselves about a year ago. We were curious what ancient civilizations thought of us. The casual revelation that humans had been exploring deep space for years, before making contact, sent another wave of concern through the chamber. Ambassador Cross smiled slightly, as if she found the Council's discomfort amusing. Krell continued, trying to regain control of his presentation. I also discovered biological assessment reports from an extinct empire called the Vraxian Dominion. Their scientists attempted to study early human civilization from orbit. The next document appeared, dense with medical terminology and anatomical diagrams. Subject species demonstrates extreme regenerative capability. Bone fractures repair in 30 to 40 rotations. Soft tissue damage heals continuously during observation period. Subjects survived injuries that would prove fatal to 97% of known species. They were watching us. Captain Webb's voice held a sharp edge. When was this? Krell checked his data. Approximately 4,000 of your years ago, by my calculations. The Varaxians maintained observation posts in your solar system for 3 generations before they suddenly abandoned them. The Arbiter asked. Krell pulled up the final Varaxian report, the one that had troubled him most during his research. The last entry reads, Observation discontinued. The native population has begun organizing into larger social groups. They have developed agriculture, animal domestication, and primitive metallurgy. Recommend immediate departure. Species development patterns suggest they will achieve space travel within 10,000 cycles. Recommend future civilizations avoid contact. The chamber absorbed this in silence. An ancient empire had studied humanity, calculated their potential, and fled rather than risk eventual confrontation. High Commander Drax broke the silence with a growl. So the Varaxians were cowards. That proves nothing. One empire's fear does not dictate council policy. Wasn't just the Varaxians, Krell said quietly. He pulled up more documents, a cascade of warnings from different civilizations across different eras. I found 17 separate references to Earth. Every single one recommended avoidance. Several suggested planetary sterilization. But none of them actually attacked, Ambassador Cross observed. Why not? If we were such a threat, why didn't anyone eliminate us when we were primitive? Krell had asked himself that question for years. I theorized that the cost was deemed too high. Your planet's gravity well is deep. Your ecosystem is aggressively hostile to foreign biological material. Any invasion force would face not just human resistance, but resistance from your entire biosphere. Dr. Ko nodded approvingly. Earth doesn't like visitors. Our planet has mass extinction events every few million years. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts. Anything that lands on Earth either adapts rapidly or dies. We adapted, show them the predator analysis, Cross said to Krell. The part about persistence hunting, Krell hesitated. then complied. A new hologram appeared, showing a computer simulation of human hunting behavior. According to ancient observations, humans would select prey and pursue it at a steady pace. They would track it for hours, sometimes days. The prey would run, rest, run again. Eventually, it would collapse from exhaustion. The humans would simply keep coming. The simulation showed a human figure moving at a steady jog, never speeding up, never stopping. The prey animal sprinted away repeatedly, each time slowing down more. Finally, it fell, too exhausted to continue. The human walked up to it calmly. "We call it persistence hunting," Webb said. "We're not the fastest species on Earth. We're not the strongest. But we can outlast almost anything. We evolved to be the thing you can't escape from." A Plixian counselor, her bioluminescence flickering with fear, asked the question everyone was thinking. "How do you stop something like that?" "You don't run," Dr. Ko replied. "You negotiate. You find common ground. You make it more beneficial to cooperate than to compete." The Arbiter leaned forward, fractal patterns intensifying. "Is that what you're doing here? Negotiating before you become a threat we cannot contain?" Ambassador Cross stepped forward, her diplomatic training evident in every gesture. "With respect, honored Arbiter, we're already a threat you cannot contain. We have faster-than-light travel. We have quantum communications. We have energy weapons and kinetic bombardment capabilities. We could have attacked. We chose to talk instead, because you're outnumbered," High Commander Drax countered. "Your fleet number's in the hundreds. The Council commands millions of ships across thousands of systems," it's true, Webb acknowledged. "But you're spread across thousands of systems. We're concentrated. And we only need to defend one planet. The strategic mathematics favor defense. Commander, you know this?" Krell watched the exchange with growing fascination. The humans weren't threatening war. They were simply pointing out that war would be costly enough to make alternatives attractive. It was a masterful diplomatic approach backed by credible capability. Professor Krell, the Arbiter said, pulling him back to the moment. "In your professional assessment, can humans coexist peacefully with Council species?" This was the question Krell had been dreading. His entire career had been built on the premise that humans were too dangerous to exist. But now, faced with actual humans rather than mythological ones, he found his certainty wavering. "I don't know," he admitted. "They possess capabilities that exceed most species in specific categories. But they also demonstrate characteristics that suggest cooperation is possible." He pulled up another section of his research, one he had barely explored because it contradicted his threat assessment. Human pack bonding extends beyond their species. Archaeological evidence shows they domesticated hundreds of animal species. They kept creatures as companions, not as food sources. They mourned when these animals died. They created burial sites for them. "Call them pets," Dr. Ko said softly. "We still have them. Dogs, cats, birds, fish. We bring them into our homes. We consider them family." The concept seemed to confuse many council members. Interspecies cooperation existed in the galaxy, but it was always transactional. The idea of emotional attachment to non-sentient creatures was foreign to most civilizations. "This is a weakness," Drax insisted. "Emotional attachment clouds judgment, or it's a strength," Krell heard himself say. Everyone turned to look at him. If humans can bond with non-sentient animals, they can potentially bond with sentient species as well. Their empathy might extend across biological boundaries that limit most of us. Ambassador Cross gave him a small nod of approval. "The professor understands. We're not here to conquer. We're here to join. But we need to know the Council will treat us as equals, not as subjects to be managed or threats to be eliminated." The Arbiter was silent for a long moment. "The Council must deliberate. We will reconvene in 6 hours. Until then, the human delegation will be confined to diplomatic quarters under guard. Protective guard or hostile guard?" Webb asked pointedly. "That depends on your behavior, Captain." As guards escorted the humans out, Ambassador Cross paused next to Krell's platform. She spoke quietly, for his hearing only. "Your research saved lives today, Professor. You gave the Council a framework for understanding us. Thank you. Then she was gone, leaving Krell alone with his thoughts and his data. He spent the recess period reviewing everything again, searching for patterns he had missed. The humans were dangerous, yes. But every species was dangerous in its own way. The Korgians had conquered through military might. The Velustrians had monopolized rare resources. The Plixians had survived through adaptability and submission. Humans had survived through relentless persistence and unexpected empathy. They were aggressive adapters who formed emotional bonds. Predators who cared for other species. Threat and opportunity wrapped in the same biological package. The real question wasn't whether they were dangerous. It was whether the Council was wise enough to recognize that danger could be channeled toward cooperation rather than conflict. When the Council reconvened, Krell realized with growing certainty that his testimony would determine humanity's fate, and possibly the galaxy's future. The Council chamber felt different when it reconvened. Word had spread throughout the station about the humans, and now the gallery sections were packed with observers from every species. Some came out of curiosity. Others came to witness what might be the beginning of the galaxy's next great conflict. Professor Krell noticed military advisors clustered in the upper sections, their attention focused entirely on the 3 humans standing in the judgment arena. The Arbiter's resonance struck the floor, commanding silence. The Council has reviewed Professor Krell's testimony and the evidence presented. We now call upon the human delegation to answer specific questions regarding their capabilities and intentions. High Commander? Drax rose from his platform, his massive armored form radiating aggression. I have studied your species' presentation. You claim to be peaceful, yet you bring a military fleet to your first diplomatic contact. You claim to seek cooperation, yet you admit to years of espionage. Explain these contradictions. Captain Webb met the commander's four-eyed glare without flinching. Commander, with respect, you're making assumptions about our intentions based on your own strategic framework. Yes, we brought military assets. We also brought scientists, diplomats, and cultural ambassadors. We prepared for multiple scenarios, including hostile reception. A wise military precaution, Drax said, or a prelude to invasion. Dr. Ko stepped forward, his thin frame a stark contrast to the commander's bulk. Commander, may I propose a demonstration? Rather than debating hypotheticals, let me show you what humans are actually capable of. Then you can make an informed decision about whether we're a threat. The Arbiter's patterns flickered with interest. What kind of demonstration? A simple one. Allow me to present medical data on human biology. Let the Council's own physicians examine it. Let them tell you what we are. Several Council members exchanged uncertain glances. Finally, the Arbiter agreed. A Velustrian medical expert, considered one of the galaxy's foremost biologists, was summoned to the chamber floor. Its crystalline form pulsed with scientific curiosity as he approached the humans. Dr. Ko transmitted a data package. This contains complete biological scans of all 3 of us. Skeletal structure, cardiovascular systems, neurological mapping, everything. Examine it freely. The Velustrian physician opened the files and Krell watched his luminescence shift from curiosity to confusion to alarm. This cannot be correct. The bone density readings are 3 times standard baseline. The muscle fiber composition includes redundant systems I've never seen before. The cardiovascular efficiency is impossible for a species of this size. It's all accurate, Doctor, Ko assured him. We evolved on a high-gravity world. Our bodies had to develop accordingly. The physician continued reading, his agitation growing. Your immune system is attacking your own body in multiple locations. You have what we would classify as severe autoimmune disorders. How are you even functioning? Ambassador Cross smiled. Those are allergies, seasonal reactions to airborne particles. Our immune systems are so aggressive that they attack harmless substances. We've developed medications to suppress our own defenses because they're too effective. Too effective? The physician seemed unable to process this. I'm reading cellular repair mechanisms that operate continuously. Stem cell production rates that exceed anything I've documented. You heal from injuries as a constant biological process, not as an emergency response. We have to, Webb explained. Earth is dangerous. We get injured frequently. Our bodies adapted to treat healing as a baseline function rather than a crisis response. Krell found himself leaning forward, fascinated despite his anxiety. He had theorized about these capabilities, but seeing them confirmed by a respected physician was different from reading ancient warnings. The Velustrian physician pulled up a specific section of the data. Captain Webb, according to these scans, you have fractured your primary leg bone at some point. The repair site shows complete regeneration. When did this injury occur? Which time? Webb asked casually. I've broken that leg twice. First time when I was 12 years old. Second time during military training when I was 23. The physician's luminescence flickered with disbelief. You suffered catastrophic skeletal damage twice and made full recovery both times. Yes. Is that unusual? For every species in this chamber except possibly the Korgens, such an injury would result in permanent disability or death. High Commander Drax leaned forward with interest. Show me the structural data on their skeletal system. The physician complied, projecting a holographic human skeleton for the entire council to examine. Drax studied it with a warrior's eye. The bone density is comparable to Korgen military-grade endoskeletons, but this is natural growth, not augmentation. Completely natural, Doctor. Ko confirmed. We evolved to support our body weight in 0.98 standard gravity. Our bones had to be strong enough to handle that constant stress. A Plixian counselor spoke up, her voice trembling slightly. Dr. Ko, your species evolved all these capabilities naturally. But surely there are limits. You cannot adapt to every environment. You're right, Ko acknowledged. We can't breathe underwater without equipment. We can't survive in vacuum. We require specific temperature ranges and atmospheric composition. We have definite biological limits. But within those limits, the Velustrian physician said, reading more of the data, you can survive in an extraordinary range of conditions. Your thermoregulation system allows functioning in temperature extremes that would kill most species. Your digestive system can process toxic compounds. Your pain tolerance is... He paused, checking the readings again. Your neural system includes natural pain suppression mechanisms. You can continue functioning through injuries that would incapacitate others. Ambassador Cross took over the presentation. Council members, you're focusing on our physical capabilities. But let me show you something more important to diplomatic relations. She activated a new display showing human social structures, historical data, cultural development. Professor Krell theorized that our pack bonding would make us loyal only to our own species. He was partially correct. We are intensely loyal to our groups. But he underestimated the definition of group. Images appeared showing humans with various earth animals. Dogs sitting beside children. Cats sleeping on laps. Birds perched on shoulders. These are our companions. We domesticated them over thousands of years. We bred them for specific traits. But we didn't just use them as tools. We integrated them into our families. A Hylian counselor, resembling a floating cluster of bioluminescent jellyfish, pulsed with confusion. You form emotional attachments to creatures that cannot reciprocate complex communication. We form emotional attachments to anything we perceive as having even minimal awareness, Cross replied. We create stories about objects. We name our vehicles. We apologize to furniture when we bump into it. Our empathy extends far beyond rational boundaries. This is madness, Drax declared. A species that feels empathy for inanimate objects cannot be trusted to make strategic decisions. Or, Krell found himself saying, surprising himself again.
Oh.
It means they're predisposed toward cooperation rather than conflict. If humans can feel empathy for things that aren't even alive, imagine what they might feel for sentient species. Webb nodded toward the professor in acknowledgement. Exactly. We're not here to conquer. Conquest doesn't interest us. What interests us is exploration, discovery, and cooperation. We want to learn from other species. We want to share what we've learned. We want to be part of something larger than ourselves. The Velustrian physician was still reviewing the medical data. I'm finding something else concerning. Your neurological structure includes redundant systems for what you call adrenaline response. This appears to be a combat enhancement mechanism. It's an emergency response, Dr. Ko explained. When we're threatened, our bodies flood with hormones that temporarily increase strength, speed, and pain tolerance. It's a survival mechanism. You can voluntarily enhance your combat capabilities through biological processes. The physician seemed alarmed. For how long? Depends on the individual and the situation. Minutes, usually. Sometimes longer if necessary. Drax's expression shifted to something resembling respect. So humans are natural berserkers. They can push their bodies beyond normal limits in combat situations. We can push ourselves beyond normal limits in any situation, Webb corrected, sports emergencies, protecting others. The mechanism isn't specific to combat. It's about survival and protecting what we care about. Ambassador Cross returned to her cultural presentation. Let me show you something from human history. We had a period called World War II. Global conflict. Millions died. Terrible destruction. Images appeared, showing devastation and suffering. The council watched in silence. But during this war, enemy soldiers sometimes helped each other. They shared food with prisoners. They provided medical care to wounded opponents. They recognized shared humanity even while fighting. Our capacity for empathy persisted even in our darkest moments. She showed another image, this one of a memorial. After the war, former enemies became allies. Nations that had tried to destroy each other became trading partners, friends, cooperative powers. We learned, we adapted, we moved forward. The chamber was silent as council members processed this information. Then Krell spoke again, his voice carrying across the vast space. The council must understand something. I spent 40 years believing humans were too dangerous to exist. But I was asking the wrong question. Question isn't whether they're dangerous. Every species is dangerous in its own way. The question is whether their danger can coexist with civilization. He looked directly at the Arbiter. I believe it can. Because their most dangerous trait, our relentless persistence, is matched by their most unusual trait, their capacity for empathy. They're aggressive adapters who want to cooperate. That's not a contradiction. That's an opportunity. The Arbiter's patterns pulsed thoughtfully. But before they could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The alarm's wail cut through the council chamber like a physical force. Security protocols activated instantly. Energy shields snapped into place around the judgment arena. Weapons platforms descended from the ceiling. Guards surrounded the human delegation, weapons charged and ready. Captain Webb raised his hands slowly, palms visible. We haven't done anything. Check your sensors. The Arbiter's fractal patterns blazed with urgent light. Security Chief, report. A harsh voice crackled through the chamber's communication system. Multiple vessels detected entering council space. Korjan military signatures. They're ignoring hails and approaching at combat speed. Estimated arrival at this station in 40 minutes. High Commander Drax rose from his platform. And for the first time since the proceedings began, he looked genuinely surprised. Those are not my ships. I issued no such orders. Coalition transponders, the security chief continued. Korjan supremacy, Draxian Empire, Halathi Union, they're broadcasting on military frequencies, demanding we surrender the human delegation for immediate termination. The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted accusations. Military species demanded explanations. Peaceful species called for evacuation. Through it all, the three humans stood completely still, their eyes tracking every movement in the room. Ambassador Cross spoke calmly, her voice somehow cutting through the noise. Captain Webb signaled the fleet. Full alert status. Do not engage unless fired upon. Webb touched a small device at his collar. Admiral Stone, this is Webb. Code situation, Delta 7. Maintain defensive posture. Do not engage first. Repeat, do not engage first. The Arbiter's staff struck the floor repeatedly. Order. The Council will have order. When the chamber finally quieted, the Arbiter turned to Drax. Commander, explain this coalition. Who authorized military action in Council space? Drax's armored plate seemed to deflate slightly. I did not authorize this. But I recognized the formation. This is the Old Guard Coalition, traditional military powers who opposed human recognition. They must have mobilized while we were in session. They're forcing the Council's hand. Dr. Ko observed quietly. Attack the humans. Make it look like council policy. We either retaliate against the council, or we die here. Either way, it prevents peaceful integration. Professor Krell felt his tendrils go numb. This was exactly the scenario he had feared. Not humans attacking the council, but the council's own internal conflicts, using humans as a catalyst for violence. The Arbiter's patterns shifted rapidly. Processing options. Can we defend this station against the Coalition fleet? Station defenses are formidable, the security chief reported. But against a full Coalition assault? Unknown. We were not designed for internal council warfare. How long until they arrive? 37 minutes. Ambassador Cross stepped forward. Honored Arbiter, we have a suggestion. Let us leave. We'll take our ships and withdraw from council space. Without us here, the Coalition has no justification for attack. They'll follow you, Krell heard himself say. Everyone turned to look at him. The old guard doesn't want peaceful contact. They want to eliminate the threat before it grows. If you leave, they'll pursue. And without council protection, they'll feel justified in destroying your entire fleet. Webb nodded grimly. The professor's right. This isn't about jurisdiction anymore. It's about power dynamics. The old guard sees us as a challenge to their military dominance. They'll hunt us regardless of where we go. A Plixian counselor, her bioluminescence flickering with fear, spoke up. Then what do? We cannot allow warfare in council space. But we also cannot simply surrender a diplomatic delegation to execution. The Velustrian physician who had examined the human medical data drifted forward. I have completed my analysis of the human biological profiles. The council should know that their capabilities are even more extensive than initially presented. He projected new data. The human cardiovascular system includes backup mechanisms for sustaining brain function even under extreme conditions. Their skeletal structure can bear loads far exceeding their body weight. Their neuroplasticity allows rapid adaptation to new environments. And their immune system is so aggressive that standard biological weapons would likely be ineffective. What are you saying? Drax demanded. I'm saying that if we allow the Coalition to attack, they will suffer enormous casualties, even if they succeed. The humans are individually more durable than any species I've studied except possibly the Korgens. And unlike Korgens, they think tactically as a unified group. They're pack hunters, remember? High Commander Drax studied the three humans with new interest. You're suggesting they could actually fight a Coalition fleet? Captain Webb's expression was grim. We didn't come here to fight. But yes, if forced, we would fight. And we would make it costly enough that the Coalition would regret the decision. That's not a threat, Ambassador Cross added quickly. That's a tactical assessment. But it's also irrelevant because we're offering a third option. The Arbiter leaned forward, which is... Cross pulled up a data display showing technical specifications that made several council members gasp. This is a faster-than-light communication system based on quantum entanglement. It operates on principles your scientists have been trying to crack for centuries. We developed it 2 years ago. The Velustrian physicists' luminescence blazed with excitement and disbelief. Instantaneous communication across any distance? That's theoretically impossible. The coherence degradation alone would we solved it, Dr. Ko interrupted. And we're offering to share the technology freely with the Council. Not as payment. Not as a bribe. As a gesture of good faith and a demonstration of what human council cooperation could achieve. The chamber fell silent as council members absorbed this offer. Instantaneous communication would revolutionize galactic civilization. It would make coordination across vast distances possible. It would change everything. You would simply give us this technology? The Arbiter asked. Fractal patterns shifting with suspicion. What do you want in return? Recognition, Webb said simply. A council seat. And Professor Krell is our formal liaison. Krell felt several tendrils freeze in shock. Me. Why me? Ambassador Cross turned to face him. Because you've spent 40 years studying us. Because you know our capabilities and our limitations. Because you were terrified of us, but you still spoke honestly to the Council about what you discovered. We need someone like that. someone who understands both sides. The Coalition fleet is 25 minutes out, the security chief announced. They're charging weapons. The Arbiter's patterns pulsed rapidly. This council must make a decision. Do we accept the human offer? Do we grant them recognition and protection under council law? Or do we allow the Coalition to act? A vote was called. Krell watched the holographic tally appear, showing each species' position. The military powers voted against recognition. No surprise there. The peaceful species were split, uncertain. The scientific species, intrigued by the technology offer, leaned toward acceptance. The vote was deadlocked, under council law. A tie meant the Arbiter cast the deciding vote, but before the Arbiter could speak, High Commander Drax stood. I change my vote. The Korgan supremacy supports human recognition. Shocked silence filled the chamber. Commander? The Arbiter asked. You were among their strongest opponents. Astrax's 4 eyes fixed on Captain Webb. I've spent my life in military service. I know warriors when I see them. The humans came here prepared for war, but hoping for peace. They brought strength, but offered cooperation. They demonstrated capability, but showed restraint. He paused. These are not invaders. These are potential allies. The Korgan supremacy has never feared strong allies. The vote shifted. With the Korgan supporting recognition, several other species followed. The tally climbed past the required threshold. The motion passes, the Arbiter declared. Earth is granted provisional council status, with full evaluation in 5 standard cycles. As of this moment, humanity is under council protection. The security chief's voice cut in urgently. The Coalition fleet is 15 minutes out. They're not slowing down. Ambassador Cross touched her communication device. Admiral Stone. Transmit the following message to the Coalition fleet on all frequencies. Earth has been granted council protection. Any attack on us or this station is now an attack on the council itself. They will face the combined military response of 200 civilized worlds. Recommend immediate withdrawal. Krell watched the tactical display showing the approaching ships. For several tense seconds, nothing changed. The Coalition maintained course and speed. Then, slowly, the ships began to decelerate. Coalition fleet is reducing speed, the security chief reported. They're requesting clarification of council policy. The Arbiter transmitted directly to the Coalition. This is the Council Arbiter. Earth has been granted recognition by majority vote. Any hostile action will be treated as rebellion against council authority. Stand down immediately. The Coalition ships came to a full stop, holding position just outside the station's depth. Insay perimeter. A communication channel opened. This is Coalition Commander Vrel. We demand explanation for this decision. Humans are documented threats. Humans are documented survivors, the Arbiter corrected, and they are now council members. You will withdraw or face consequences. After a long pause, the Coalition ships began to turn away. The crisis was over. But as Krell watched the humans maintain their calm composure, even as the threat diminished, he realized something profound. They had never panicked. They had never threatened. They had simply presented options and allowed the council to choose wisely. That, more than anything else, convinced him that humanity's place in the galaxy might actually work. 6 months had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Council. Professor Krell stood in his newly expanded lecture hall at Zarian Academy. Watching students file in from dozens of different species, the amphitheater had been renovated twice already to accommodate the overwhelming demand for his courses on human studies. What had once been his smallest specialty class was now the most popular program in the academy. But today was different. Today he wasn't teaching alone. Dr. Raymond K.O. stood at the front of the hall beside him, reviewing notes on a data slate. The human scientist had agreed to guest lecture once a week, providing first-hand accounts to supplement Krell's academic analysis. The combination had proven incredibly effective. Students learned theory from Krell and reality from K.O. The contrast between expectation and truth had become the foundation of the entire curriculum. Ready, Professor? Ko asked, his casual demeanor a stark contrast to the formal academic environment. Krell arranged his tendrils in what he had learned was the human equivalent of a nervous gesture. I'm still not entirely comfortable with this arrangement. You make me look foolish when you correct my assumptions, Ko smiled. You make yourself look honest when you admit you were wrong. Students respect that more than perfection. The lecture hall settled into attentive silence. Krell activated the holographic display, showing a comparison chart of Deathworld classifications. Today we will discuss the practical implications of human evolutionary adaptations. As you know, I previously theorized that certain human capabilities were mythological exaggerations. Dr. Ko will demonstrate why my calculations were incomplete. Ko stepped forward. Let's start with persistence hunting, since that seems to fascinate everyone. Professor Krell calculated that a human could theoretically track prey for 8 to 12 hours before exhaustion. He based this on standard metabolic models. He pulled up new data. The actual record for continuous human running is about 350 hours. That's over 14 days. Now that's an extreme example, but it illustrates that human endurance exceeds standard biological models. We don't fit the usual equations. Young Velustrian student raised a crystalline appendage. How is that possible? The energy requirements alone should make it impossible, Ko agreed. But humans evolved multiple, overlapping systems for energy management. We can burn different fuel sources. We can slow our metabolism. We can push past normal fatigue limits through what we call willpower, which is essentially our brain overriding our body's safety protocols. Krell added his analysis. This is what I failed to account for in my original research. I treated humans as a standard biological system with fixed limits. But human limits are flexible. They adapt based on necessity. The lecture continued, covering everything from human immune responses to social behavior. Koa described how humans had survived ice ages, plagues, and countless environmental disasters. Krell explained the evolutionary pressures that created such adaptability. When a Plixian student asked about human emotional responses, Ko's answers surprised many in the room. We feel empathy intensely, even for things that aren't alive. We name our vehicles. We apologize to furniture. We create elaborate emotional narratives about objects that have no consciousness whatsoever. Isn't that psychologically unhealthy? The student asked, probably Ko admitted with a laugh. But it's also what makes us good at cooperation. If we can feel protective toward a piece of metal we call a car, imagine how protective we feel toward actual living beings we consider friends. After the lecture, Krell found Ambassador Cross waiting in his office. The space had been converted into an unofficial diplomatic annex, with sections dedicated to Earth Council relations. Maps of human explored space covered one wall. Cultural exchange programs filled another. Trade agreements, technology transfers, and cooperative research projects were documented in organized databases. How's our favorite professor managing his new role? Cross asked, settling into a chair designed for human physiology. Krell gestured with his tendrils in what he hoped conveyed mild exasperation. I'm an academic ambassador. I study things. I don't negotiate interstellar treaties. You're doing both now, and you're good at it. She pulled up a report on her data slate. The Velustrian Science Council wants to establish a joint research facility with Earth. They're proposing a station in neutral space where our scientists can work together on advanced physics. That's excellent news. It is. But there's also concerning news. The Korjan Old Guard is making moves again. They're proposing new council regulations that would restrict how many colony ships Deathworld species can deploy. It's targeted at Earth, obviously, but it would affect other species too. Krell felt his academic instincts activate. That would violate the expansion accords from the Third Council era. The legal precedent clearly states we know. Cross interrupted gently. We need you to testify. Again, the council meets in 3 weeks to vote on the proposal. Your voice carries weight. You're seen as an objective expert who isn't afraid to criticize humans when necessary. Krell had testified before the council 7 times in 6 months. Each time he found himself defending human integration while honestly acknowledging their capabilities. It was exhausting. It was also necessary. Review the legal framework, he said. Prepare a formal analysis. Cross stood to leave, then paused. Professor, I want you to know that Earth appreciates what you're doing. When we first arrived, you were terrified of us. You had every reason to recommend our elimination. Instead, you chose to see us as we actually are. That took courage. After she left, Krell returned to his personal research. He had been working on a new book, a follow-up to his original text on human mythology. This one was titled Deathworld Reality, Cooperation Beyond. Biology. It examined how humans were integrating into galactic civilization and what that meant for the future. His data slate chimed with an incoming message. It was from Trill, his former student, who now served as his teaching assistant. Professor, you need to see this. The Human Embassy just released a cultural exchange program. They're offering to host students from any council species on Earth. Full scholarships. Complete immersion in human society. Krell reviewed the program details. It was ambitious. Students would live with human families, attend human educational institutions, experience Earth's various cultures and environments. The risk assessment alone must have taken months to prepare, but it was also brilliant. Nothing would reduce fear of humans faster than direct personal contact. Nothing would build trust better than shared experiences. He sent a message to Ambassador Cross. The exchange program is approved from Zarian Academy. We'll send our first candidates next term. That evening, Krell updated his personal journal, a practice he had maintained since his student days. His entries had become increasingly reflective since humanity's arrival. Day 189 since humanity joined the Council. I'm teaching a lecture course on a species I once believed were too dangerous to exist. I'm serving as diplomatic liaison between Earth and species who fear human expansion. I'm watching my entire life's work being rewritten in real time, and I've never been more intellectually fulfilled. Humans don't fit our models. They break our assumptions. They challenge everything we thought we knew about evolution, psychology, and civilization. They're aggressive persistence predators who pack bond with anything that moves. They're survivors who choose cooperation over conquest. The galaxy has spent millennia refining itself into stable patterns. We've created rules and structures that maintain order. We've marginalized species that don't conform. Humanity represents chaos to that order. But chaos properly integrated drives evolution. My worst day, standing before the Council while my research was simultaneously validated and disproven, has become the foundation for my best work. I'm no longer just documenting the past. I'm helping shape the future. And if that future includes humans, perhaps the galaxy will finally evolve beyond its comfortable patterns into something unexpected. His journal entry was interrupted by an urgent alert. Krell opened the message and felt his tendrils freeze. It was from the Council's long-range monitoring network. A new signal had been detected from deep space. Another species, previously unknown, was broadcasting distress calls. They claimed to be fleeing from something terrible, something that consumed entire worlds. The Council was mobilizing emergency response teams, and they were requesting human participation. FVO, because if there was one thing humanity had proven, it was that they were very good at surviving terrible things. Krell immediately contacted Captain Webb, who had remained at the Council station as Earth's military liaison. Captain, are you seeing these reports? Webb's voice was grim. Already briefing our fleet commanders. The Council wants us to join the rescue operation. They're specifically requesting human involvement. Your species has experience with existential threats. We've survived a few, Webb admitted. But we've never faced anything from space before. This could be completely outside our experience, or it could be exactly the kind of impossible situation humans somehow survive, Krell found himself saying. You have capabilities the rest of us lack. Persistence, adaptability, the refusal to accept extinction. There was a pause. Professor, are you actually recommending we take on an unknown alien threat? Krell's tendrils weaved in a pattern that expressed certainty. I'm recommending the Council work with humans to face this threat together. Separately, we each have weaknesses. Together, we we might have something unprecedented. You've come a long way from the professor who wanted us classified as extinct mythology. I've learned that being wrong can be the beginning of being right, Krell replied. The question isn't whether humans are dangerous. The question is whether we're wise enough to point that danger in the right direction. Webb's laugh carried across the communication channel. I'll inform Earth. We'll contribute ships to the rescue operation. But Professor, you're coming with us. The Council wants an objective observer. You're the only one who understands both human capabilities and Council protocols. I'm an academic, not a field operative. You're a bridge between two civilizations. Time to see if that bridge holds under pressure. The communication ended, leaving Krell alone with the realization that his comfortable academic life was about to become very uncomfortable indeed. But as he prepared his equipment for a journey into deep space, he found himself not afraid, but curious. Humans had taught him that terror and opportunity often wore the same face. They had shown him that the most dangerous situations sometimes produced the most valuable discoveries. His book about human mythology had been wrong because he had never met actual humans. His new book would be different. It would be based on direct experience, honest observation, and the recognition that the galaxy's future might depend on species that didn't fit comfortable. Patterns humans had arrived 6 months ago, claiming to be peaceful. The galaxy had debated whether to destroy them or accept them. Now, as a new threat emerged from the darkness of space, the real test would begin. Could humans and the Council truly work together? Could cooperation overcome fear? Could the galaxy evolve beyond its established patterns? Professor Krell was about to find out, and he was going to document every moment of it, because whether humanity succeeded or failed, their impact on galactic civilization was already irreversible. The only question now was what kind of impact it would be, as his shuttle launched toward the Council fleet assembling in deep space. Krell looked at the data streaming in about the unknown threat. Whatever it was, it had destroyed multiple civilizations. It had consumed worlds. It had survived for uncounted millennia. It had never encountered humans before. And perhaps, Krell thought with something approaching optimism, that would make all the difference.